Welcome to week 1 of Allison's Wonderland and all of the books that I have read in the past week or so. Since this is the first one, it's a little bit of a cheat, and I'm talking about a little more than I read just in the last week because there are a lot of good books that I've read recently that I want to recommend, and I want them to have their day in the spotlight. So we're going to be talking about a little more than just the past week. It's also a little unusual because I currently have a Kindle Unlimited subscription that is going to run out in about 2 weeks. So this and the next 2 episodes are going to be talking about pretty much all Kindle Unlimited books because that's all I'm reading right now. I'm just binging on that right now. But once the subscription is done, then we're going to get to the rest of my gigantic TBR list. So don't you worry, there are lots and lots of books to come. But if you do have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, this is the episode for you. So let's get into it. First series I want to talk about is the Dragon Gate epic fantasy series from Lindsay Buroker. I love everything Lindsay Buroker has written. I am a huge fan of her books. I have literally read everything that I've been able to find that she has ever written. So I am a gigantic fan. This is her first epic fantasy series. Currently 2 books are out. I will probably be reviewing the 3rd book soon because that is supposed to come out in about a week and a half. But it's an epic fantasy series. So the books are long and I'm expecting there to be a lot of them. First one was a little bit slow. It took a little bit to get into, but it is very similar to a lot of her writing. There's nerdy protagonists, there's the tough bad guy who's not really bad, so we don't really know. Possibly a love interest. We'll see how that goes. But the first one was a little difficult for me to get into. It didn't grab me as much as some of her other books have. But then book 2, I was just absolutely sucked in. I really enjoyed it. I'm really, really curious to see where the story is going. Because now all of a sudden you are very, very engaged with all of these characters. And I'm not going to spoil anything if you haven't read the series, but things are happening and you don't really know where they're going. And it's exciting. There may or may not be dragons. It is a Dragon Gate after all. All right, the second book I wanted to talk about is Midlife Zombie Hunter. This is part of Shannon Meyer's 40 Proof series, which is pretty much about a middle-aged woman kind of sort of discovering magic exists and then having to deal with it. And I don't know if it's just that I'm like getting to that period of my life, but I'm really relating to all of these like midlife magic books a lot more lately. I might just be getting old, but I really enjoy that series. That would be up there with one of my favorite Shannon Meyer series. I mean, she has written a lot and she's written a lot of good stuff, but I really, really enjoy her 40 Proof series. For some reason, I thought this was going to be the last book in the series. I don't know if I was just making assumptions, but it is not. There are more books coming out in the series, so eventually I will be reviewing more. Third book I wanted to talk about is another Shannon Meyer book, but this is the one that she co-wrote with Kelly St. Clair. And this is the first book in her Honey and Ice series. So this is A Court of Honey and Ash. Something that you see a lot with Shannon Meyer's books is the kind of intersection of the magical world and the non-magical human world, and the way that the magical world has been kind of segregated away from humans. So they've got their own space that humans don't have to acknowledge them, don't have to deal with them, can't really get in there at all. And this is kind of the same sort of thing, but we're talking about fairies this time, and bad things are happening. There's a lot of drama. So magical people are running away into the human world and chaos ensues, of course. But this sounds bad, but it's not. I was very disappointed that there's only one out so far because I really enjoyed this. I'm very into the story of this one, and I really, really want to see where it goes, but also there's a lot of mysteries that you want resolved. So I'm excited to see where the series goes. Speaking of Kelly St. Clair, I also read her Eva Viva Fair Isles series. Now, this was another one of those series where I was not into it in the first book. And most of the time, I just kind of tell myself, just get through the first book and we'll see where it goes. And if I need to quit it, I can quit it. It's fine. But the first book was hard for me to relate to the characters. It was hard for me to get into. It just felt very superficial. But get past that first book and the characters come to life. You get to know them a lot more. There's a lot more story going on. There's a lot more conflict and drama happening. So after that first book, I was completely sucked into the series. I think it's a 7-book series, and I was hooked. So if you're reading it, just know the first book may not really hook you that much, but if you can get past that to the second and third books, you'll read the rest of it. And it's pirates. Who doesn't like pirates? It's a really fun series, and it's very unexpected in a lot of ways. Even though it does you can kind of guess some things, but it still can be very unexpected in a lot of ways. And I really enjoyed it. I like a good pirate book. All right, next we have Bite Me, which is book 1 of the Shadow Guild Vampire Bride series by Lindsay Hall. If you are familiar with Lindsay Hall, you know that she kind of has this ongoing world. A lot of them are 3 to 5 book series of characters that you get to know one character, and then you get to know their friend, and then you get to know the next friend, and they all have kind of their time in the spotlight to learn their story. And I really enjoy how she does this. I love the world she's created. I love the characters that she has. I'm a huge fan of her books. I really, really enjoy her books. And if you are familiar with her books, then this is Mac's story. It's really fun. It's really fun to see how it intersects with the other characters, but also how it's completely unexpected. Like, would not have expected this story from Mac at all. So it's really interesting. This is book 1 in what's probably going to be at least a trilogy. I'm actually not sure how many there are going to be, but I'm really looking forward to the next ones. Speaking of Lindsay Hall's world, she has also worked with Veronica Douglas. They wrote, I think they wrote some books together a while back, and then Veronica Douglas has kind of branched off using the same world and some similar characters who overlap, and is kind of writing her own space into that world. It's a very different writing style, and there is some conflict in the sense that some of the characters aren't fully consistent with how they've been in other stories. So if you think of it as its own world, then it's totally fine. And I think for me, it's easy to think of it as its own world because her writing style is so different from Lindsay Hall's that I don't feel like I'm looking at the same characters, so it's okay. But she just released Wolfmarked, which is a Magic Side book. It is Wolfbound book 1. So this is another first in probably a trilogy or so. This is one of those books of somebody who does not know magic exists. So this is somebody who's brand new to the world of magic. And so introducing her to this world is really interesting to see how an outsider gets to know all of this, because you don't always, a lot of the time you get introduced to characters who have grown up with this, who have known about magic all their lives. So it's a really interesting to look into how the non-magical world intersects with the magical world. And there are werewolves, so that's always fun. Lastly, and this is what I'm currently reading, I am most of the way through this series, but not done yet, so we'll hear more about it next week, is the Demon Days Vampire Nights series by K.F. Breen. Now this is interesting because it is currently a 10 book, and I know the 11th book is coming out in a bit. It's not out yet, but it's a long series, but it's also broken down into smaller trilogies or sequels that will follow individual characters. So I don't want to spoil anything too much, but like the first 3 books all follow one character, and then you've got the next 3 books which follow another couple of characters, and now I'm on book 7, which is the second book following a third character. But then they all intersect. You keep finding them popping up in each other's books, and it's one overreaching story. So it's really good. I really enjoy it. There are demons, there are vampires, there are werewolves, shifters. It's got all of the modern magic, and it is a really interesting story, seeing how these kind of anomaly magic people pop up and how they're dealing with this world and politics and drama and conflicts. And I really enjoy it. I'm very, very much enjoying this series. That is all what I've got right now. Those are all the books that I've been reading recently. And I will continue to be on a Kindle Unlimited binge for the next couple of weeks or so. So there's going to be lots of books, and they're all going to be Kindle Unlimited. So that is what I've been reading. If you have any suggestions for books that you want my opinion on, you want me to read, or especially if it's anything Kindle Unlimited right now, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this and you want to see what else I'm reading, make sure you subscribe. This is a YouTube series, and it is also a podcast series. So you can subscribe on YouTube. Just search for Allison's Wonderland, not the singer. That may have been a mistake. 2 L's, not 1. Oops. But also, this is on all of your favorite podcast platforms. So if you'd prefer to listen to it as a podcast, you can absolutely listen there. And we'll be back next week with more of what I've been reading. And I'm losing my voice. I feel like Belle. Is he gone? And also I'm talking about books. How appropriate.